Well, 3 Israeli civilians were murdered today by a terrorist gunman who opened fire at the Allenby border crossing on the Israel-Jordan border. The victims were identified as 57-year-old Adrian Marcelo Podmesser, resident of Ariel, Yohanan Shehori, 61, a resident of Ma'ale Ephraim, and Yuri Birnbaum, 65, a resident of Naama. May their memories be a blessing. The attacker approached from the Jordanian side with his truck. The gunman exited the vehicle and opened fire. The 3 Israeli victims were all men in their 50s and 60s. Security forces on the scene neutralized the attacker, and EMT crews arriving on the scene declared the victims deceased. The IDF searched the truck and ruled out the presence of explosive devices. The Allenby Crossing is used largely by trucks carrying humanitarian aid from Jordan on their way to Gaza. Northern Israel, including the city of Kiryat Shmone, was pounded by about 50 rockets fired by Hezbollah from South Lebanon this morning. IDF Chief Allenby was on the northern front checking troop readiness for war. More from ILTV's Steve Leibowitz.
The incoming Hezbollah rockets this morning came in 3 salvos toward Kiryat Shmona and the Galilee Panhandle, causing damage to homes, but no injuries were reported. Most of the projectiles were shot down by air defense or fell harmlessly in open areas. It was a violent weekend of cross-border strikes between Israel and Hezbollah. After 30 incoming rockets were detected, warplanes attacked launchers and Hezbollah military structures in several areas in South Lebanon. IDF artillery struck the areas of Shoba and Kafar Haman and a munitions warehouse in Leda. IDF Chief of Staff Allenby visited the 210th Division in the Golan Heights, meeting Northern Commander Ori Gordon to renew potential war preparations at the border. Fighters from the Iftach Brigade practiced maneuvers for scenarios in enemy territory. The troops practiced combat and maneuver scenarios in complicated terrain, advancing along a mountainous route like those in Lebanon. It's day 338 of the war in Gaza. The Air Force targeted and killed key Islamic Jihad and Hamas commanders embedded in civilian areas. The airstrike was called in after intelligence indicated the presence of the commanders in the Amr ibn al-As school in northern Gaza. 2 Jihad commanders were eliminated during the day of Air Force strikes at the school complex turned terror base. The strike by the aircraft was precise and ended an immediate threat to the area. Elsewhere in Gaza this week, IDF forces attacked and destroyed over 40 terror infrastructures, eliminated more than 100 terrorists, while located several tunnel shafts.
The spy chief from the United States and Great Britain have issued a joint appeal for a truce for hostage deal to bring an end to the war in Gaza. The appeal comes as mediated talks between Israel and Hamas remain stalled. More from ILTV's Steve Leibowitz.
CIA Director William Burns and MI6 Chief Richard Moore penned opinion pieces in the Financial Times, saying the world order was under the worst threat since the Cold War and called for hard political compromises. They said a Gaza ceasefire was key to confronting threats.
We will continue to work as hard as we can with the other mediators on this, because there's no good alternative to getting to that ceasefire and the release of hostages.
The joint call for a ceasefire came as U.S., Qatari, and Egyptian mediators are preparing what Washington has termed a new take-it-or-leave-it proposal for Israel and Hamas. Last night, some 250,000 Israelis took part in mass protests in Tel Aviv, and many thousands more protested in other locations in the country, demanding that the nation's leaders do more to secure the release of the Israeli hostages held captive by Hamas for the past 11 months.
We have to all remember that despite all of that work that needs to be done, this is ultimately a question of political will. And this gets to your question. Whether or not leaders on both sides are prepared to recognize that enough is enough, and that the time has come finally to make some hard choices and some difficult compromises. I hope profoundly that both of those leaders are going to make that decision, because, as I said, there's an enormous amount at stake here, human as well as...
I think that decision has not been made by the 2 parties.
Well, I think, we will make this more detailed proposal, I hope, in the next several days, and then we'll see.
The British spy chief said the threat from Hezbollah and Iran is still looming.
The Iranians have a whole playbook, a destabilizing playbook around their region, and we see that in their sponsorship of Lebanese Hezbollah, in their support to Hamas, which enabled them to do the horrors that we saw on October the 7th.
Well, since the tragic execution of 6 Israeli hostages last week, Hamas has continued their psychological warfare with the release of hostage videos almost daily. Yesterday, yet another propaganda clip was released, this time about the Bibas family. Now, here to speak with us today about the impact of this psychological warfare and how Israeli society should respond is Israel's leading expert on psychological warfare and a professor at Ariel University, Dr. Ron Schlier. Dr. Schlier, glad to have you with us. So glad you could join us today. What can you tell us about these recent hostage videos? What is the goal of releasing these videos from Hamas?
Oh, it's Hamas is physically much less than Israel in that term. So it needs to bridge the gap of powers between them, of strengths. It's by psychological warfare. Now, psychological warfare, what used to be in the past called propaganda, is such a tool or a war doctrine that compels somebody to do things which he would never have done otherwise, even though it's war, it's against his own interest. This way, Israel pulled out of Lebanon in 2000. This is why Israel released over 1,000 dangerous terrorists during the Gilad Shalit abduction deal. And this is how Israel is operating now against its own better interest by limiting the scale of warfare in the Gaza Strip. So we do not like to admit it, that we are being manipulated, especially when we are. And this is why Hamas is so effective. What we're seeing basically is a snuff film. And this should alert world, global powers and armies and defense organizations that this is going to be the new phase in warfare. And they're much better than anyone else in that. And there's no Israeli who hadn't seen those clips, even though we know that this is going to manipulate us to work against our own better interest. But this is the way it works.
Now, how should Israeli society respond to the release of such videos? I mean, some have said ignore, some have said publish because it shows who they really are. What is the right response to this type of psychological warfare, this propaganda?
First of all, we need, just like in any other type of warfare, move the battlefront towards the enemy and to play its own home ground. And for doing that, we need to undergo two major strategic stages. One is to learn the culture of the enemy, and Israel especially is weak in that, and not to mention the whole Western world, because we somehow despise the Arab world, and we underrate it, and this is a huge mistake. The second thing is that to realize the rules of engagement when it comes to psychological warfare, and we need to know how it is done, and to turn the tables against Hamas. Hamas should be worried about what's happening to its leaders, to its chief commanders. The Gazans should be worried. Why is Hamas playing them and uses them as cannon fodder in the hollow promise of a better world in the world to come, while their own children are having the time of their lives in Qatar and Dubai, in the swimming pools and Ferraris and Maseratis. But the trouble is that we don't do this because we think it's not the way of the warrior. It's not a sporting way, as the British used to say it. It's not the way to conduct a war.
Well,
and the British refused that in the First World War.
We are unfortunately, sorry to cut you off, we are unfortunately out of time. But I do want to thank you for joining us and giving us some insight into this issue. I certainly think that Israel should step this up a little bit, as you've mentioned, and hopefully they take your advice on this issue and we understand the Arab world a little bit better. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
In a world full of stories, whose voice will you trust? At ILTV, we deliver the truth from the heart of Israel and bring you the latest from Israel with integrity and passion. Join a community that believes in the strength and resilience of Israel. Your support means reliable, honest news direct from the source. Subscribe now. Be part of the story. Be part of Israel.
Over the weekend, an American Turkish dual citizen was shot and killed by IDF troops during a protest in the West Bank as tensions continued to escalate near Palestinian cities. Let's take a closer look at what happened.
On Friday, a 26-year-old American and Turkish dual citizen, Ayşenur Ezgi Egi, was killed while participating in a protest against the IDF near the Palestinian city of Nablus. The IDF is investigating the incident, but thus far has stated that during operations near Beita, troops opened fire after an instigator had posed a threat to soldiers by throwing rocks. Palestinian reports claim that the IDF used stun grenades, tear gas, and live ammunition to disperse a protest against settlement expansion in the West Bank. Ayşenur lives in the United States and is reportedly an activist with the anti-Israel group, the International Solidarity Movement. In response to the incident, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken stated they deplore this tragic loss, and Turkey condemned what they called a, quote, murder committed by the Netanyahu government.
Dün gencecik bir evladımızı Ayşenur Ezgi Eygi'yi alçakça katlettiler. Bugüne kadar 17.000 çocuk, 41 masum sivili öldürdüler.
Last week, Turkish President Erdogan, known for his support of Hamas and extreme positions against Israel, also called for a new alliance of Muslim nations against Israel. The incident has also led to increased criticism of Israel from anti-Israel groups and activists involved in the protests against the IDF in the West Bank.
And this happens in context. This isn't an isolated incident. It happens in the context of the 17 people who were killed in demonstrations in Beita since 2021. We have heard nothing about them because they're not Americans.
The death of Ayşenur also comes after Palestinian media claimed that a 13-year-old was killed after being shot by IDF forces in the midst of a clash between extremist settlers and Palestinians in the village.
Former President Donald Trump addressed the Republican-Jewish coalition, warning that Israel's existence is at risk if Vice President Kamala Harris becomes president. He pledged to combat anti-Semitism, support Israel, and urged Republicans to rally Jewish voters in his favor. ILTV's Mayan Hoffman has more.
Former President Donald Trump addressed over 1,000 donors at the Republican-Jewish Coalition Leadership Summit via satellite Thursday evening. The Las Vegas crowd cheered as Trump, the Republican presidential candidate, vowed to combat anti-Semitism and support Israel. He warned that if elected, U.S. universities promoting anti-Semitic propaganda would lose accreditation and federal funding.
I will put every single college president on notice. The American taxpayer will not subsidize the creation of terrorist sympathizers on American soil.
His strongest remarks came with a stark warning. If Vice President Kamala Harris were elected president, the Jewish people risk losing the state of Israel.
If Kamala Harris wins, terrorist armies will wage an unceasing war to drive Jews out of the Holy Land. Iran and its proxies will spread bloodshed and death all around the globe. You're not going to have an Israel if she becomes president. Israel will no longer exist.
He urged Republicans to rally their Jewish friends in support of a Trump victory.
We must reject anti-Semitism in our schools, reject it in our foreign policy, reject it in our immigration system, and reject it at the ballot box this November. You must get Jewish people or people that love Israel. You must get them to vote for Republican.
The Harris campaign hit back at Trump's remarks, saying Donald Trump has made it obvious he would turn on Israel in a moment if it suited his personal interests. And in fact, he has done so in the past. Historically, about 64% of Jewish voters support Democratic candidates, with 26% backing Republicans and 9% undecided. A February poll of New York voters showed 53% of Jewish voters plan to vote for Trump, with analysts suggesting the Jewish vote could be pivotal in the election. Trump predicted he could win up to half of the Jewish vote in 2024.
Well, at the Venice Film Festival, you might think that the films were the main focus, but instead, another issue stole the show: the Gaza war. Let's take a closer look at what happened in Venice. At the Venice Film Festival, multiple filmmakers used the event to promote the Palestinian narrative of the Gaza war, most prominently Jewish filmmaker Sarah Friedland, one of the festival's winners. Friedland used her win as an opportunity to express solidarity with Palestinians and accuse Israel of genocide.
As a Jewish American artist working in a time-based medium, I must note I'm accepting this award on the 336th day of Israel's genocide in Gaza and 76th year of occupation.
Friedland, who is American, won Best Debut Feature at the festival for her film Familiar Touch and finished her speech by calling for the liberation of Palestinians. However, the Israeli story was also told at this year's event. Israeli film Of Dogs and Men also made an appearance at the Venice Film Festival, directed by Israeli Danny Rosenberg. The film tells the story of an Israeli girl on a kibbutz in the south on October 7th, searching for her dog. The film sheds light on the horrific terror attack Israel experienced that day. The film's inclusion in the festival alone was controversial, as anti-Israel activists pressured the festival to ban Israelis simply because of their nationality.
How can you judge a film without even watching it, like solely based on our nationalities, which is the reason they tried to boycott the film. So that kind of oppression of free artistic expression, I think, is very sad and very disappointing, and it completely opposes cinema, what I believe cinema to be and what film festivals are all about, which is simply just free expression.
While the film did not win any awards, it did give Israeli cinema some recognition at the hostile Venice Film Festival this year. Well, in New York, a Pakistani man residing in Canada has been arrested trying to cross the border into the United States for the purpose of carrying out a terror attack on October 7th. The suspect, Mohammed Shazeb Khan, planned to attack a Jewish community center in Brooklyn, New York, with automatic and semi-automatic weapons on October 7th this year. According to police, Khan has stated his intent to carry out the attack, his commitment to ISIS, and even sent messages boasting that this would be the biggest attack on U.S. soil since 9/11. Attorney General Merrick Garland stated that Khan's goal was to kill as many Jews as possible. Fortunately, Khan was apprehended at the border, and charges have been filed by the Department of Justice. Now, a special feature from the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews. President Yael Eckstein highlights 3 important recent headlines you might have missed, but are crucial to understand.
Shalom, my friends, from here in the Holy Land. I'm Yael Eckstein, and here are 3 things that you should know about Israel this week. Number 1. Recently, Israeli IDF forces recovered the bodies of 6 hostages who were brutally murdered by Hamas terrorists. These hostages are 6 of over 200 innocent Israelis who were kidnapped on October 7th and brought to the torturous dungeons, the tunnels in the Gaza Strip. The people of Israel and the people of the entire world saw as Hirsch Goldberg Pollin's parents worked day and night in order to bring him home. The people of Israel are praying for the remaining hostages to come home and for the families to find peace. Number 2, in some positive news, Israel has delivered over 25,000 vials of polio vaccine to the Gaza Strip. This will help vaccinate over 1 million people in Gaza. even within this war, where Israel is dedicated to eradicate terror and the terrorists who have been holding Gaza hostage, we care about the civilians. Life is sacred. This is not a war against the innocent. This is a war against the terrorists. And number 3, the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews recently distributed individual equipment to the northern border cities that will help put out fires that are caused by the rockets. Almost every single day since October 7th, there have been tens, sometimes hundreds of rockets launched at Israeli cities in northern Israel by Hezbollah terrorists. Many of these rockets start fires. It's burned thousands of acres and has put homes and people at risk. And so the fellowship has delivered firefighting equipment to Israel's first responders that when they respond to the rocket attack, they can put out the fire. Well, there you have it, friends. There are 3 things that you now know about Israel this week. Join me next week, same place, same time, for more updates on what's happening in the Holy Land.
And now the Israeli team at this year's Paralympics is performing incredibly as they up their tally of medals to a total of 10. ILTV's Devo Klein has the full report.
The Israeli Paralympic swimmer that never fails to impress, Ami Omer Dadon, born with cerebral palsy, has outdone his previous Paralympic achievements, winning 4 medals in this year's Paris Games. The 23-year-old secured his first medal when he won gold in the 100-meter freestyle swimming event. Then, in the 150-meter, Dadon came in second, taking a silver. Last week, Dadon added another gold to his tally with the win in the 200-meter freestyle, and Dadon didn't stop there, as this weekend he secured a bronze medal in the 50-meter freestyle event. Together with the bronze won by Guy Sasson in wheelchair tennis and a women's goalball silver from the past weekend, the Israeli Paralympic delegation now possesses an impressive 10 medals from this year alone. This impressive tally, as this year's Paralympic Games come to a close, is the highest earned by the Israeli Paralympic team since the 2004 Athens Paralympic Games, when the delegation returned home with an impressive 13 medals. As the Paralympic team returns home, we welcome them with open arms, as any representation of Israel is as important now as ever.
ILTV News wants to hear from you. Tell us what you enjoy most about our show and how we can make it even better. We're inviting viewers to take a quick survey and share their feedback. Simply scan the QR code on your screen and let us know your thoughts. Your input helps us improve and bring you the best content possible.
Sagot Winery, where passion meets tradition. Nestled in the heart of Binyamin, our vineyards yield exquisite wines crafted with generations of expertise.
And now let's take a look at the weather forecast. Partly cloudy skies are expected tonight around the country, with temperatures reaching lows of around 23 degrees Celsius or 74 degrees Fahrenheit. Then tomorrow, mostly sunny skies are expected alongside warm temperatures set to reach highs of 34 degrees Celsius or 93 degrees Fahrenheit. That is a wrap for today's news. For more of the latest updates from Israel on all your devices, be sure to follow our ILTV channel, subscribe to our newsletter, and explore our website, iltv.tv. Stay informed with the latest news straight from the heart of Israel. I'm Emily Schrader. Be well, and thank you so much for watching.